I think it's important for us to be aware of the profound pressure upon us to appear transcendent of wounds or untouched by them, to have no wounding. And what people will do to avoid the wound, and how people judge the wound. For example, I remember a Tantra teacher, a very popular one actually, and he worked with a lot of women, and he had many women who were his lovers and so forth. And women would approach him. They were upset with him about things. Like they called him on his lack of presence. Like you're really not being present, like you're avoiding something here. And they tried to tell him that, but they were coming from the wound of that, where there's such a longing for that masculine presence, and there was such a wounding around that. So they did feel they were coming from like, hey, what are you doing? They were, yeah, coming from quite a lot of upset. And so he just would instantly, and women called him on it over and over again in many different types of way, also in a non-wounded way. But any time a woman spoke to him about this, he would simply say, oh, that's the wounded feminine. And because it's the wounded feminine, it means I can dismiss it. It doesn't matter. Therefore it's not true. If it's wounded, it's not true. And I watched that for a while, reflected upon it. That somehow you will only, if I'm lucky, pay attention to me if I present you in the most pristine way that shows absolutely no, I'm feeling nothing. You can do whatever you like, I feel nothing. I have no wounds here, therefore I'm speaking truth. And I've come to see that that's not true. That the wounded self does have a place to speak. And even if it is wounded and may not be in full truth, or maybe have some confusion, there is truth to be heard. And what I've come to look further into the great wounding, I want to say is simply, it is not so simple. So where I start to view life a little bit these days, where I start to see it, is I don't see such a separation between soul and form. I don't see them so separate. So if some wounding appears in me, in my feminine, in my femaleness, then I know it's appearing perhaps in my soul. And because I don't see so much separation, I know probably it's appearing in your soul as well. It's like the wounds that appear in me are like from spirit, wanting to incarnate into form, to be lived, and through being lived and being felt, to be healed. And what I see as well, just having lived the life I've lived, I'm a very sensitive person. I feel a lot. And I used to believe, like I had this community, Tantra community, and whenever jealousy was in the community, I felt it as mine. I felt like, oh, I'm the jealous one. And then much later I saw, no, you know what? No matter how they looked like, there was a lot of jealousy in the community. But I was the one who was willing, I've always been willing to feel things. I don't step away from feeling. I don't mind, I like feeling things, and sometimes it's really tough. But because I'm the one willing to feel it, sometimes, and also often, I can be the one who has the wound appear in her. I've had that happen a lot. And then you come to hear about this thing called compassion, which is like a very high-level teaching. We're always looking for high-level teaching, so it's right there in front of you. The Buddhists keep giving it to you again and again and again. Right there. And you want to go to this one or that one or get some great secret teaching right there. Compassion. It's one of the most masterful teachings on earth. Very few people can do it. Very few. But because compassion, it means we suffer together. Come with, passione, to suffer with, to suffer together, right? To suffer really is to really feel something, and to suffer together. And what you notice in a sangha, a spiritual community, is when you, especially ones that are centered around feeling, like I've been fortunate to be part of a community here in South Africa that very much invites everybody to be in a great feeling field together. And we step into that field and we feel together. And you can feel, sure, in this field there's some uncertainty or doubt, there's things going on, but let's just allow it and feel it and see where is it really coming from. Where is it arising? I can push it and make it about that person, but it's here. It's in the field. It wants to be felt. For me, it's like coming from soul, from spirit, want to incarnate, be lived and felt so it can evolve and find its new forms. It can be highly personal. You can relate to it. Like there's a childhood wound around that or something. So when I come here and I start talking to you about wounds, masculine wounds, and I'll probably talk to you more about feminine wounds as well, I'm actually inviting you to step off the pedestal of transcendence, of, I'm made it, I don't have any wounds, and take your seat in the circle of feeling and feel what's here. Like, be willing to feel it, like I will feel it too, whatever that is. But we do it together, isn't it? We do it together. But there's a wound to be felt. So, and you might be more resonant with one wound or another. Currently, I'm very resonant with this wound of loneliness. Not right now, to be honest, but it comes by. Like I used to for some years I went very deeply into grief. And whenever grief came past my door, I said, come in, let's have tea. I went so deeply into grief. It was exquisite in the end. It showed me parts of my being that nothing else could show. But when I got to the bottom of that ocean, dark, cold ocean, exquisite. If you watch my octopus teacher, they'll tell you it takes maybe 6 months, if you watch the interviews with the director. It takes about 6 months to become accustomed to that cold water. For those first 6 months, your body just wants to get out the water. But once you become accustomed to it, it becomes blissful. And it's how I felt about grief. It became my favorite feeling. Like my favorite feeling, more than bliss. And I would just totally surrender into grief when it came by. And I had some things to grieve about. I'd lost a lot in my life. A lot. I lost everything. Ooh. I did. It felt like that to me. It felt like that, looked like that. Now my wound that gets touched sometimes is loneliness. So I sense it's changing because I've had some really deep blessing around that. Some really deep seeing, which I think I shall tell you in another video because it will matter to you. It's about belonging and tribe, and I will talk about it in another conversation. So what I'm trying to say, and it's not so easy to speak this, I can tell, it's like I'm trying to invite you to not run away from the wound, because the wound is collective, and the more of us that are willing to feel it when it arises together, compassion, instead of going, oh, I'm not going to feel that, oh, it's my wife, she's just wounded, push it onto her, make her feel all of it, I'm not going to feel it, she's having it's like, I'm not going to feel it. It's like, let yourself feel it. I talk about the broken heart of the masculine. See where where it has come by and asked to have tea with you. Like, have a look. And I'm going to talk about other wounded aspects of the feminine. And quite soon, what's knocking on my door is to talk about the wounded aspect that surrounds the language of whole in the feminine. Where that still needs to be felt. when we're willing to feel it together in this great Sangha, this community of those who love the truth, the deep spiritual truth of their soul, everything changes. Everything changes. So it's a deep teaching I'm giving you right now. It really is, because these words are just the beginning. It's like, how do you step into that field and are willing to feel it, you know? And of course you already, you already are doing that. But I'm trying to bring you awareness. Say now you someone who feels everything and is in the wound a lot. Then you might also want to invite people to feel with you. Your friends, your partner, your spiritual community. Feel with me. Stop trying to push all the feelings away or fix them. Just feel them, you know. Let's feel together. Compassione, compassion, to suffer together. But if you suffer together in the great feeling field, you'll find, like I just told you, that bliss is wonderful to feel, but so is grief. So is grief. Grief is an extraordinary feeling. It's extraordinary what it does inside of you, what it opens you, where it takes you to. When my mother died last year, I followed her into spirit lands and saw them. That's what grief can do. It's extraordinary. And for someone in the middle of it, caught without awareness, it can annihilate them. They may never want to get out of bed again. They may not want to live any longer. So I understand that too very much. I really do understand that completely. But we don't always, if you watch my videos, there's one or two, and there's one I nearly didn't want to put up because my wound was up that day and it was so seen. And I was like, oh, I don't want you to see it. Yeah, but I put it up because also I wanted you to see it. I wanted you to see I'm not every day shiny and happy and blah. I'm like, I get touched, because I'm alive and I'm a human being and I feel and I get touched and I'm willing to feel it when it comes past my door. And some days maybe it's too much and I find ways not to feel it. It can happen too. It's all right. But most of the time I'm standing up and willing to feel what's here. But I'm also finding the way to not fully identify with it, and that's really, really, really hard. Fully identify. I am, lonely. It's like, there's a lot of isolation and loneliness in the field at the moment. And over this time of this COVID, there's a lot of that happening. It's going to touch people. Even if you have companions, you may be touched by it. So it's stepping into the masterful practice of compassion. Most people will not really understand this for their entire life. You can learn the most secret of secret teachings and not get it. Not get why it's the central teaching of Buddhism, what seems like many times. They speak about it all the time. It's a great key. It's a great gateway into spirit. And it's a deep work. It's a deep work and a deep giving and a deep willingness to step into that feeling field. And some days you're in bliss and some days some days, you just don't want to meet those days. But one day, we're going to look for the ones who are willing to feel the most, who we used to call the most wounded, and we're going to honor them for being willing to feel so much. Thank you for feeling so much. Thank you for feeling that and that and that, because I couldn't. One day, we'll see it a bit differently. And then I also get tapped a bit on my shoulder to remind you of something that's been touching me. Ask you to come into some deeper awareness of it, if you're not already there. Remember the ones who came before you. Remember those ones. I see so many people waking up on the planet at the moment or feeling so free. Like, oh, I'm going to give a sensual cacao evening, and and there's this kind of sense that they really feel they've come with so much awareness to the planet and wakefulness, and they're going to do this amazing ceremony because, you know, and they don't realize how many people walked in front of them. Our ancestors are in front of us. Like if you have a child and you're in front. They're opening the way for us, our grandmothers, our great-grandmothers, our great-grandfathers, our mothers, our fathers. However they did it. Remember, they had other really much more challenging field to come in than maybe we have. So some have walked in front of you and they've opened the way. Where maybe like 30, 40, 50 years ago, who knows, 100 years ago, if you did a sensual cacao ceremony, you might have been put to death, Or who had to live to work with the field, to change that thickness, to meet those challenges, to meet those minds. What did they have to do? What did they have to sacrifice? Maybe they were put in a madhouse. Maybe they were put in jail. Maybe they were executed, even, so that you can do a sensual cacao ceremony. That I can sit here talking to you about a completely alternative spirituality called Tantra than the mainstream. Who were these beings? Who were these people? How did they do it? And to remember to honor them. Like, thank you, my grandmothers, my grandfathers, my mother and my father. Even if I'd think, wow, you didn't do such a great job, you could have done better. And we never really understand unless we walk in those shoes ourselves. You really start to see it. I mean, it amazes me. It amazes me how people don't see, I've been in this field for 22 years. And, the other day, a woman sent me this sweet text of how she can feel also coming into the womb web. And I was like, thank you so much. It's very kind of you. I've been standing as a tantrika in one of the most conservative countries on earth, in one of the most conservative cities, actually, Johannesburg. Not the most, by the way, but really strong here. And no matter what I do with my life, I mean, I could be celibate, When people think of me as the tantrika, they think of me as a wildly sexually free woman. And whatever that means in their mind, maybe I will have an affair with their husband or something, And I get, for years, but it's changing a bit now, for years I might get like different things thrown at me. Like if they have shame about sexuality, they'll throw shame at me. If they have guilt, eventually, you kind of don't even know it's happening, except by a kind of distrust people can have around me. And whether I've done nothing else, which isn't true, but if I just did that, if I just stood up and said, I'm a tantric woman in Johannesburg, and whatever you're going to throw at me, and other women have watched me from the sidelines and gone, wow, she can stand up and say she's a tantric woman, which actually in many people's minds equates to a whore or something like this, right? Well, then, if she can do that, then at least I can be sensual at home, or I can, I can even put a post on sex on Facebook, or who knows. It's like it gives them that little bit. Oh, she can be that far out, while I can be this far out. It gives them that freedom, just to be a little bit more themselves. Whatever that, and yeah, there's been a few who have been willing to be that, and just that alone can change, and that affects and has ripples, and there's been people who have been willing to stand up and be that all over the world. And I honor all of you deeply. And the ones that are listening, the ones that are not listening, the ones that are living, the ones that are no longer in form, the ones that have never been in form, those that came before me. So I can sit here and share what's on my heart with you. And it just feels important for us to remember that and not become so full of ourselves. Remember who made it possible. And even if you don't know them, remember them, because they're your family. They're our family. And they came before very bravely and did what they could in their way. You know? My one friend, her granny was one of the first to ride a motorbike, first woman or whatever. I think that was the story. Whatever it is, it's so beautiful. Mm. To really acknowledge the ones who walk before you in the tantric lineage, the Dakini lineage. There have been so many, so many. Mm. And another little one I just want to share with you is acknowledgement. So I understood something a little differently about that today. I was in a sweat lodge of some dear friends and what I also consider my family, of a community called the Santo Daime. And they serve ayahuasca. They're situated in Brazil. A very interesting group of people, really. Beautiful work, right? So I'm in the sweat lodge with them, and the woman holding it, she says, would you like us to do the rainbow light meditation? And I'm like, oh yeah, I was hoping you would. Hoping you would, And she said, yeah, the rainbow light medicine was given us by this amazing shaman called Armando, and he got it from the Tibetans. It's Tibetan meditation, and we love it. And the rainbow light meditation is a sounding meditation that connects you to your chakras. And what I loved about it was that she acknowledged who gave it to her and which lineage it's from. And that's something actually, because I always talk about acknowledgement, but what I realized that in the spirals of tantric circles, like if other dakinis are doing similar meditations to me and they're tantric, I know they're coming from within. But then these many meditations go outward to other lineages, and it's beautiful to acknowledge, oh, this is a lineage from Shima, this is the lineage from the Shima Tantra school. It's like it doesn't belong to the shaman. Because when I work with medicine from the shamanic lineages, I don't claim them as tantric. I acknowledge, wow, this is from the Shipibo. Well, they're so beautiful. This is from the Santo Daime. But for example, there's this amazing practice, which is like feeling your feelings, and it's called Chod, and then you feed the demon, and it comes, I think, from the 11th century. I could be mistaken on that time exactly. And Dakini developed this practice in the 11th century. And psychotherapists on earth use it. Very similar approach. Maybe not the demon, feed the demon part. Maybe they leave that out, unfortunately. And they never acknowledge it comes from the tantric lineages, that it comes from a Dakini, because they probably don't even know. And this is always an important piece. And, maybe not her name, but it's from the Dakini Pure Lands, or it's from the Shipibo. I don't know why. I don't, in the end of days, it doesn't really matter. But it's beautiful, isn't it? To say, wow, the Tantrikas gave me this. And why is it beautiful for me that you get this from a Dakini? Because there is a lot of attitudes and ideas and concepts about Dakini. But if you're using her practice to let go of suffering, it might actually be helpful to the Dakinis if you acknowledge that, so that our work can come stronger and deeper onto this planet. It will be a beautiful thing to do, always. And for yourself too, I'm sure you'd like it, and your lineage. Thank you for listening, and I hope these words help where they come deep inside my being from these Dakini Pure Lands. I wonder if there's anything else for now. No. Actually, there's one more thing. I'm going to do that on another video. Yeah. I'm just thinking, should I, shouldn't I tell you now? No, I'm going to do another video. Sure. Feeling it all. Feeling what's here. Now and again you need to take a break from that, that's fine. But step into the great Sangha of feeling and let things evolve. Compassion. Namaste. Namaste, namaste, namaste.